Hello and welcome to EduCurious, where we highlight exceptional educators and dive deep into complex issues. Today's guest is David Price, President and CEO of Bok Tower Gardens in Lake Wales, Florida. So welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me on, Amber.
So the connection for this is Bok Tower Gardens has grown substantially over the last several decades, even in my lifetime, from just a beautiful place to go visit to a place that actually incorporates a lot of educational components. So I would really love to have you talk about what it offers in the aspects of education in Lake Wales.
So Bok Tower Gardens is a public garden, and but we have a big component of music, but also education. Part of our education is experiential education, where people come to learn things by doing things. We have a full suite of classes, art classes, nature classes, horticulture classes, but also we have school groups. We have lots of school groups coming with 1,000 school children coming. We have special events for children and adults, and our education goes from 18 months to 80 years old. And so we have events. We have Earth Day for children. School children come. But just last week, we had Tropical Fruit Festival. Next August, we're going to have an Orchid Festival. And these are events where people come. There's things for children as well as adults, but it's all about the experience. Our biggest impact for education is our daily visitor. We have 265,000 visitors a year. And when people come, you come there to learn things. You learn by doing, learn by seeing. The biggest thing is what Edward Bach was trying to do is he created the garden as a place to inspire people to beauty. And so we've been doing that for 100 years.
I love the part about having an educational experience through just that, the experience of beauty and nature, instead of just trying to absorb knowledge to the classrooms. Talk about some of the offerings that Bok Tower gives our students and our lifelong learners by the touching and feeling and moving throughout the gardens.
We do a lot of interpretation in the gardens, and so it's education by people walking around, observing plants, animals, and the quietude of the gardens. Sometimes people are overwhelmed with too much information these days. Everything is about education, and sometimes the last thing kids want to do is want to read something when they go out, they get away from school. They're bombarded by information. There's almost an information overload. And a lot of the education is about soft fascination. And soft fascination is when you're laying on your back on the grass and looking up at the clouds. It's effortless, and it doesn't require you to think, but it allows you to think. That's what the garden is about. It's a lot like meditation. And sometimes education is not just about learning facts or seeing something new, but it's about discovering something in yourself. How often do people just sit and do nothing these days? The garden gives people a place for that. And the really amazing thing is that Edward Bach realizes the need for this 100 years ago. Someone asked him why he created the gardens, and he said, because Americans are becoming so electrified. And think what he would say with people with cell phones these days. And so he created a place for people to get away from that. And we still are that retreat today.
You've incorporated some summer camps and workshops. So, in particular, talk about how you harness educators or artists to facilitate learning in more of a structured dynamic.
So we do have classes. We have art classes. We have artists who come and lead those classes. We also have meditation classes, singing bowls, yoga classes, and horticulture classes. Some of our own staff teach those classes, as well as we have some guest lectures. We had a tropical fruit festival, and we had 3 speakers come and talked about raising tropical fruits, using tropical fruits. People come to the gardens because they are curious. I would say our visitors tend to be more curious than the normal citizen, and people want to learn things, and they want to discover things. So, and some of that's about music. We have music concerts. We probably have 8 to 9 music bands that come in. We have on the Great Lawn. And we're trying to introduce people to new types of music as well as new artists. And it's all about discovery. We are in process of putting together next year's program, but we've got on the list. We've got a bonsai class. We have a wine walk, and the wine walk is about learning new wines and how to pair food with wines. And so we'll have probably 8 to 10 different types of wines with food pairing.
How do you harness the community aspect of Bok Tower? Because people come from all over the world to see this beautiful location, but it's in many of our backyards. So, how do you get out there and pull some of the Lake Wales natives to your facility?
We do a lot with social media. We I remember when I first started as president, I heard about MySpace, and I said, I don't understand social media, but we need to get on it. And now with Facebook, Instagram, so we get a lot of images out. We have a full-time staff person doing marketing. And then the local community, we have this tower up on a hill you could see from 5 miles away. And so anybody who's coming to the community sees the tower and there's a curiosity to come up. But many of the people, and I'm sure, Amber, you were a child. I know you were probably running around the gardens as a young little girl. And so you grew up just knowing this is the paradigm of your neighborhood, of your community. That's the great thing because we have children whose grandparents are bringing them here and whose grandparents were young children who were brought by their grandparents. So it's multi-generational. There's, word of mouth, as I said. Now there's a lot of curious people who come to the gardens. We have a deep history. We have a conservation program for nature, and then our music program, but also architecture and art. We have a lot of facets that people are finding out about us with digital marketing. It's just amazing the information we can get out. We had a study done, and this was back in 1906 by a gentleman by the name of Edward Ware. And he was a very learned man. He was a editor of a national scientific journal, but he was brought in by the Bachs to kind of discover what makes our visitors tick. And it's a great report. And one thing he stated, he said, you have to let people know about your history. You have to let people know about Edward Bach. And I know when I first started working there, we were showing a slide presentation about Edward Bach, and then we've gone to videos, and now we can put that online. And so people are searching for things to do, and then they go down a rabbit hole on history, and they find out about Edward Bach and all that he did. But besides Edward Bach, there's Mary Bach, his wife. She created the Curtis Institute of Music. And she funded a lot of the arts in Florida. The Annie Russell Theater in Rollins College was funded by her. The Maitland Arts Center was funded by her. And the Bots just were very active in promoting the arts. People are rediscovering that, and people want to do something different. They're tired of things that are not real and want to discover something that's real. So when you come to the gardens, there's real animals. We have probably about 800 acres of natural areas that we're in the process of restoring. So with hiking trails, so there's a lot of birders who come to the gardens, and we have a lot of photographers. So there's something for everybody. The local people, we've had so many people who've moved to Lake Wales, and they said, I moved here because I visited Bok Tower Gardens and I wanted to live in this community. And some of those people have become volunteers at the gardens. And so we just have a long history, and we're so integrated to what the community does. You mentioned we had talked earlier about the Lake Wales Art Center. We do partnerships with the Lake Wales Art Center. In fact, the Lake Wales Art Center, when it first got started, probably 40 years ago, we're doing concerts at our El Retiro house. And that's where they had their live concerts back before they had the art center. There's a lot of integration with the community and just a long history. So it's great to be in a small community like Lake Wales because we get a lot of support from the folks. But we also have a larger reach throughout the state and also internationally.
You mentioned volunteers, which I find key to any organization. How do you use student volunteers or volunteers that are in that student age bracket?
Well, we have a program where we use high school students, and sometimes we have individuals who come to the gardens. I know in high schools they have a certain requirement for volunteer hours, and so we have individuals come and want to know a project. We've also had students who are interested in science and have worked with our endangered plant program. It's a program to conserve Florida's rarest plants. And we have a genetics lab. So we've had high school students who are doing genetic analysis of rare plant species. And then also we've had work days where groups come out, students come out. But we have a very active program for internships too. So student interns who want to learn about horticulture. We have a summer program. And then also we have a fellowship program for Carillon students. And some of the students we've had have gone on to win international competitions and be highly placed at some of the world's best carillons. They come to the gardens to study under Geert de Hollander, who's our carillonneur. And Geert's probably one of the top carillonneurs in the world, as well as a great composer. So we have a real full gamut of opportunities for students to come and volunteer or internships.
Talk about some of the careers that somebody who maybe doesn't know what they want to do when they grow up could actually do right here at your gardens. Like the variety of career choices sometimes just blow me away because I don't think of all those different things.
Yeah, I laugh when you ask me that, Amber, because somebody asked me once why I do what I do, and I'm an artist, I'm a sculptor, and I work in a garden. And I was at a party once, and I was maybe 35 years old, so this is 30 years ago. And I rewound my life to a time that my parents took me to a public garden, took me to Brook Green Gardens in South Carolina, and I remember walking around thinking, I want to be a sculptor and I want to work in a garden someday. And I ended up doing it. And so I feel like there's this great opportunity to expose young people to public gardens. And public gardens are really diverse. One, there are a lot of different types of public gardens. Not all gardens are the same, and it's like a work of art. Each work of art is a little bit different. But our garden is a meditative garden, but we have a conservation bent to it for land conservation and plant conservation. And so for our internships programs for students, and these are for college students, either freshman, sophomore year, or even junior, senior, but we introduce students to the full gamut of what a public garden is about. So that includes everything from marketing to horticulture to conservation to administration to working in our nursery. There's we have about 100 employees at the gardens and 8 different departments. So it takes a big crew to run a public garden, and there's a lot of opportunities for people. And most people think about gardening. Well, what do? Do you mow the lawn? You plant plants? Is it pretty flowers? We do that, but there's so much more to a public garden. When kids come to the gardens on our Earth Day or during school field trips, we have school field trips, and usually it's May. We'll have thousands of kids coming to the gardens, and so we take them on tours. And so we show them what we do in the gardens, but also we talk about experiencing the gardens, how to maybe write poetry or get inspiration. And that's part of what we do also. It's not just the mechanics of the gardens, but it's the philosophy of the gardens and getting that across to children. One thing I remember is in school field trips when I was a kid was not what I was being taught or what I was had to learn, but it was about the experience. I remember the experience. And so the best thing we can do for children when they come or students when they come is give them the experience, and then they can build on that. And that's like really planting seeds for children. For me, when I was a child and my parents took me to a garden, somebody saw me probably walking around looking at all of this sculpture, and they said, "Oh, the kid probably doesn't understand any of it." But what it did is it planted a seed in me, and that seed germinated and it grew, and then finally it bear. And now I'm making seeds again and planting seeds and kids, and it'll be decades, but I'm sure it'll bear fruit.
What are some other areas that someone can be exposed to when they're at the tower and maybe not even know that somebody does that for like a real job?
I never, really even thought about working in a public garden until I graduated and I took a career aptitude test, and it said you should work in a public garden. And I thought, they pay you to do that? And I got a job in a public garden, just exposing people to that. And we have everything from and there's some more glamorous aspects to public garden. It's the working with plants and conservation that people think. But there's also, we have an accounting department, we have a philanthropy department, we have a membership, we have visitor services, there's housekeeping, there's facilities and maintenance. We have gardeners, we have mechanics, we have conservation managers, and then we also have land managers who are doing work on our natural areas. It's a full business, and I would think that in other gardens there's all sorts of entertainment, event planning, is a component. And other gardens, they have other programs that besides what we have. So it's a big world out there. And I encourage anybody who is interested in public gardens to join. There's a professional organization. It's called the American Public Garden Association. And I had served on the board of that for a while. And it really is an eye opener. Anybody who's getting into the public garden field, to how diverse of a business model it is. And that organization can help young people grow and develop professionally, and also to make contacts in the public garden world. There are probably 600 public gardens in the United States. Some of them are small. There are probably about 50 or so really large public gardens, and we're in that group. And every state has public gardens, and there's public gardens that are run by universities who are more research oriented. There are public gardens that are display. There's public gardens that are focused on horticulture collections. There are public gardens that are focused on native plants, and then there's public gardens that are focused on art. Whether it's performing arts or the visual arts. So there's just a big spectrum out there. And I'm always happy to talk to young people. I have young people ask me, what I do and why I do it. And I will take the time, because I was a young man once and I spoke to some people in public gardens, and I had a couple mentors who just took me under their wing and just told me, if you want to work in a public garden, this is what you need to do. This is the coursework you need to do. And it's been very helpful to me. And interesting enough, as I start working here, when I started working here at Bok Tower Gardens, Edward Bach did the same thing. When he was a young man, he talked to people. He was 13, 14 years old, and he would talk to people when he was 16 years old. He had dinner with the president of the United States. And so he interviewed people and asked them questions. What's the success in life? I try to live my life like that. And when people come to the gardens, it's a real eye opener to what all we do.
What is your philosophy on life as far as career goes? Like making sure that you're doing something meaningful, if you can sort of encapsulate that.
Curiosity is the big thing. I think young people need to be curious, and actually, curiosity you can have it all your whole life, and and then not to waste time on senseless things. Sometimes people get tied up in video games or just watching endless videos of nonsense, but to really delve into something and have a curiosity about it, and then follow your passion. Once you have this curiosity and you have a passion, it amazes me. I've met some young people at an early age that have just grasped some ideas and then followed their heart, and never be afraid to take chances. And sometimes you live in a small town, you think, well, what are my opportunities here? You don't know who you're going to meet, and when you meet people, that opens doors. And if you take chances and you ask people. If you ask people, early on in my career at the gardens, we had the CEO of Wawa, and he lived here locally. And I met him and I asked him, I said, what's your key to success? I did the Edward Bach kind of interview with him. He sat down and spoke with me. I mean, it was like 2 hours, and I only planned for to be there at his house for an hour, but he kept going on, and really gave me some inspirational insight, and also gave me some books to read. And I read those books, I devoured them, and that helped me in my early career. So for any young person, it's that curiosity and seek out people you admire and seek out people who've been very successful and ask them how they got there.
What are some of your favorite books these days that inspire you?
Right now, I'm delving into history. I just love history. I love history of civilization. One recent book I read was *Sapiens*, and I'm listening to lectures by Kenneth Harrell, who is a wonderful historian. And I do a lot of audio books because my time is limited. So when I'm sculpting, I'm just listening to audio books. I did a sculpture I just finished last year, and it probably took me 18 months, but I probably went through 4 or 5 books while I was sculpting. But I'm fascinated by history. I think as you get older, you start to wonder why we do the things we do, and studying history explains that.
Let's talk about this sculpture. You mentioned it, and I adore it. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it's huge, huge pieces, the ones that I've seen. Tell me about this side passion of you as an artist.
Well, I've always been fascinated by nature, and I'm a very tactile person. I like to touch things, and I just have a good sense of 3 dimension, and so nature inspires me, and I believe in sculpting nature animals to show their dignity and their beauty, and these animals have evolved in these habitats we have, and especially here in Florida, we've got so much wildlife, the bird life, animal life. I particularly like alligators because they are so interesting. And that's this big sculpture I just finished is an alligator sculpture. I haven't had it cast yet, but I started sculpting when I was probably 8 or 9 years old with some clay. And then I started getting into wood carving. And then I got into college. I was doing stone carving. And I really like stone carving, but it's a medium for a younger man. It is heavy and loud. And then also it's hard on your hands. So I transitioned from stone to clay and having clay cast in bronze. And so right now I've been mainly doing bronze work. For a while I was doing painting. Early on when I was in high school, I was doing oil painting, and I really like that. And I may get back to that. But right now I'm full into to bronze work. And so, my inspiration is I go out, and for my artwork, I always enjoy the hunt for the animal and photographing it. Sometimes I get to hold the animal. Sometimes I've got dead animals. I've gone to a good friend of mine. He's passed away now. Tom Scottman was a vet, and Tom would call me up and he says, "Hey, I've got a barn owl. Do you want to come see it?" And it was an owl that he had to put down because it maybe had an injury. And so I would handle the bird and look at it and photograph it, understand its anatomy, and it's just the deeper you look at animals, the more beauty there is in their form, and their form follows function. Every animal, they don't waste anything on their physique. It's all to the betterment of hunting or flying or just reproducing. Birds have color and great feathers, and alligators, they have a good design and they've stuck with it. But I really enjoy doing sculpture, and some of it is people say they're amazed by the detail in it. And they said it must be so hard. The detail is really easy for me. What's hard is the structure. And once I get the structure and the form of the piece done, I can start adorning it with the feathers or the scales on it. And And I could almost do that mindlessly with a glass of wine in my hand and headphones on, listening to Kenneth Harl history. It's the process that I enjoy. When I'm doing sculpting and I'm working with my hands, I just relax. And sometimes I'm in my studio and I look up and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I say, oh my gosh, I got to go to bed. I got to stop. And so I have so much energy from it. All the work I put in, I get more energy back out of it. I have actually a basement in my house. I live on a hill. It's the hill going down to Lake Wales Lake. And so there's a big drop from the front of my yard to the back of my yard. So I have actually space for a basement. And so that's my studio. I used to say I'm doing art in my garage, and I said no, it's a studio. It sounds much better, and it really is a studio. I've got lots of tools. I've got lots of materials, whether it's wood, stone, clay, metal wires. I've got welding machine for my armatures. I will say it's a little chaotic because it is a small space, and so there's a lot of material crammed in there. But it's a place where I can escape to, and it's really a retreat. Not everybody needs to have a retreat like that. And I really encourage young people to do art. Young people, sometimes they don't have anything that belongs totally to them. And whether it's how you dress or what you do, or, a lot of that's influenced by how your friends think of you. And with art, you can create something that's totally your own. And I've seen young people who've done art and they don't show anybody because once you start showing your art to people, they start influencing you. That's important for an artist is not to do art to please other people, but to do art to fulfill your needs, your psyche. And I think that that's so important. And I've had people see my art and they say, "Oh, I can't create art. I'm not good at it." And everybody can do art. And not every piece you do is going to be great. I mean, I make a lot of crappy pieces of art, but you have to do a big volume of it. And then from that volume, there will be good art that comes out of that.
I want to hear a little bit about your journey. You talked about some of the people that were mentors and how that helped you in a positive way. Well, just kind of take us a walk back through time. I don't want to say your history, that makes you sound long gone, but like your David Price journey up into this point in time.
My father had a workshop and he allowed me space in that workshop until to use his tools. And I probably spent the better part of my childhood at a workbench making things with my hands. And then my parents, they would take us out camping. Every vacation was a camping trip. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, and so we'd go to the beach on the weekends, and during the summer, almost every weekend we'd go to the beach. And so my parents would run me off from we had a tent camper, a Cox pop-up camper, and they'd run me off. Said, "Just get out of here, come back at dinner time." And so literally, I would disappear for 8 to 4 hours. And so I had a lot of freedom as a child. And I spent that time just observing nature and just being outside. And then when we weren't camping, my father loved history. And I remember after church on Sundays, we would go out driving in the countryside. We'd go to old forts. He loved cemeteries, and we would go to old cemeteries, and do rubbings of gravestones and just exploring. And my father, and I didn't realize this, but he was really keen on giving me access to nature. And wherever we moved, we always moved next door to where there was woods and forest. And so I had this opportunity to go out into the woods. I was really bored as a child. I was hyperactive and I was bored. And so what I do is spend hours and hours in the woods just looking at animals, roll over rotted logs and look at the centipedes and the spiders and the salamanders. And so it was just a life of discovery. And in Charleston, I found places where there were fossils. And so I would dig fossils endlessly. I have boxes and boxes of shark's teeth from when I was like a kid. I still have those boxes. And then in Charleston, there's such a history there. I found places where there were old bottles, cork bottles that were from the 1800s. And and we would dig those up. So it was a great childhood that I spent outdoors. And then from that, I went to college and decided I wanted to study botany. And I liked it from less the scientific realm, but more of the romantic realm, the exploration, the beauty of plants. And so I studied botany, and midway through we had a professor come and speak about careers in botany. And he just got up and he said, "There are no jobs in botany. There are no jobs in botany." It's like, I was just shocked. And actually, some of the students in my class, they got out of botany. It's like, well, I'm going to get a degree in something I can get a job in. And I said, well, I'm not going to worry about a job. I'm going to follow my passions. And so, I studied botany, and I really loved biology. When I was in high school, I took the senior biology class. I took it 3 times. The teacher, every time I signed up for it, she says, "Not you again." But I just loved it. And so, when I got into college, I took a lot of different courses. And one of the courses I took was invertebrate zoology, which is about worms and things without backbones. And the professor his name was Ed Rupert, and he told everybody to get colored pencils because each system of these worms you drew like had to be a different color, like the nervous system, circulation system, digestive system. Each one had to be a different color. Well, I was so much into drawing and doodling. I had a fine tip Indian ink pen, really, really fine. And I decided I wasn't going to do them in color pencils. I was going to do them in the pen because I could draw them so much better. And about halfway through the class, through the year, Dr. Rupert was walking around the classroom and he was looking at everybody's drawing, and he saw that I was using a black pen, and he threw his chalk eraser on my desk and he started yelling at me. He said, "I told you to use color pencils. You can't tell what you're doing." And I held up my picture to him and I said, "Well, look at what I'm doing." And he looked at me and his mouth dropped and he says, "Oh my gosh, that's really good." And then I got a job illustrating dissection manuals of earthworms. It was my first paid art job. So I love that, kind of looking at nature and drawing it. And I graduated in botany, and then there were no jobs in botany, but I'd studied plant pathology, and that's the diseases of plants. And so I started working in agriculture, and then ended up going into the Peace Corps with my wife, and was in North Africa and Tunisia. And we loved that. I mean, had a great experience. And then came back from there. And that's when I had to make a decision of what I'm going to do with my life. And I took this career aptitude test, and it said you should look at public gardens as a career. And that was a real eye opener. And so I applied to public gardens, and I got a job as a plantation manager at Magnolia Plantation in South Carolina. And I love that job. I worked for a really difficult man, really difficult, but I met the neatest people. Some of those people had been on the plantation they were probably the eighth generation that had lived on that plantation. But I learned so much from that experience. And it was a situation where, as a young man, I was 26 years old, and I'd never supervised anybody. And all of a sudden I had a position where I supervised 15 people. And I had never taken a horticulture course. I'd only studied botany. I studied science, but I had to fake it till I made it. And so every night I would read T.S. Everett's Encyclopedia of Horticulture. And so the next morning I was the expert, the information expert. I basically faked it for 3 years, but taught myself horticulture. This is something that young people really, really don't have an opportunity to really be put into a situation where they have to just make it. It's either flight or fall. For me, that was a great opportunity, learning opportunity. And then that led me into the career I'm now. And I came to Bok Tower Gardens 38 years ago as director of horticulture. And I was there for 20 years as director of horticulture. And now the last 18 years as president. And I've really enjoyed the opportunities that I've had there. And some of it's been just managing a piece of land. And I think that's what I enjoy most. Is the work I'm doing now is carrying on what somebody has done before me. And when I leave here, I will hand this off to somebody else. And in another 100 years, the place will still be there.
So to dive back into education from your educational journey, what do you advise some of our educators, some of our teachers that are working with students and young people to help prepare them for as far as careers or uh, invoking curiosity? What are some things that you'd like to say? Make sure you focus on this. Don't forget about this.
I was a kind of an outcast when I was younger. I kind of marched to a different drummer, and I was sort of an old soul when I was young, and I wasn't into the pop culture, and so sort of counterculture, if you will. But I had a couple teachers that took me under their wing, and they saw that, and they encouraged me to learn and explore things. This one teacher who was my biology teacher, who I kept taking the course, uh, you know, we would get into these discussions in class, and so she encouraged me to ask questions that sparked my curiosity. For educators, it's looking to children. It's not the loud children or the children that are, or the students that are just really shining stars. There are people who are out there that are maybe quiet, and you should plant that seed. It's important for students to go back and tell their teachers what they meant to them. I did that, when I was in college. I got out, and I made a point to go back to my school and tell the teachers, thank them for what they did. It is hard being a teacher because you see hundreds of students, and some of the students will go and do great things, and you may not ever find out about it. But just to know you've planted seeds in those students, and each student, no matter how difficult they may be, they'll grow out of that. And I regret some of the hard times I gave my teachers, but that's just the trauma of being a young person, the hormones that you're going through, and also many students have issues at home, or struggles with finances and things like that. And so to be open to those students are at a place in their life, and all you can affect them for a short period of time, but you have to let them go. But to see the best in them. With the garden, we want to welcome a diversity of people, and diversity of ideas, and I've been trying to create a place where people can come and have an experience, at their own level. And all the work I've done, I've been there 38 years, is to try to change the garden without changing the garden. And the garden was created. It's a fantastic idea. I'm managing it just for a short period of time, and it's like a relay race, and I'm going to hand that off. Uh, and that's a legacy for me, and it's really important for me to be able to hand that off. But just to let people know, when people come to the gardens, for them to experience it in their own way, uh, and to be able to use the garden too. I mean, we have some people that come there once a week or once every day, and it's their own private getaway place, and I want to make that as comfortable for people as possible, and just let people know it's a place for you to escape to and to grow with.
Well, thank you for spending time with us today. Your story is amazing, and the gardens are a very important part of my life. Whether you're a teacher, a parent, or just EduCurious, join the community as we explore various educational topics and learn from each other. We'll see you next time.